In this tutorial, we're going to create a fully functional Tinder clone without coding using Glide. That means that without coding, we're going to be able to replicate most of the functionality, like swiping and matching and chatting and having a profile with a bunch of interesting data and even an admin dashboard. Now, if you're new to Glide, this tutorial may be a bit tricky to follow at times, so I highly recommend you check out my new course that will help you master Glide in 8 hours at grumo.com/goglide. It actually includes the Tinder template in this video, plus viewers of this channel get a 50% discount by using the coupon YouTubeLive. Vamos! Alright, so let's go into the actual Glide app editor to see how the app works behind the scenes. We can see here that we have a place where we can start swiping, right? And if we swipe to the left, that means that we chose not to, we don't like that woman or guy or whatever. And if we like the person, it tickles our interest, then we would swipe right, like this, okay? Now, if there's a match, which means the other person swiped right to your profile, then you will be matched, and then you will be taken to, you will be shown a match here, and you'll be taken to a private chat, all right? Now, and then you have your own profile here with all your information and even some interesting stats as to what is the percentage of people that like your profile, and based on that, whether your profile is hot or not. And then you can set which kind of person you're looking for, male, female, other, the age range, and also how far away from you. So you can see there's some nifty logic in order, for example, to calculate the matches, right? So for example, if we change the distance, we can see that there's nobody within 10 kilometers, within 20 kilometers, also nobody, within 40 kilometers, 2 people, and 2 results within 60, and within 80, there's 3 results that match these settings. The great thing of Glide is that it allows you to pretend you're logged in as different users. So if we click here, you'll be able to see all the profiles. And in this case, we have like 7 women and 7 guys. And now I could pretend I'm logged in as a woman. And when I go to swiping, I can swipe. And when I see myself, I could swipe right. And then we could see if there's a match or not, right? So we can swipe now right. And just remember that Eva swiped right to my profile. And there's no match. Oh, there is match. There's a match because I swipe right with her. And it means as soon as the match happens, now we can start chatting to each other. Hello, right? And then I could pretend that I log in as myself now. And now I could start chatting back. So there should be under matches Eva. And I could say, hello, back. Okay, there you go. So now we have that personal chat. And then my profile looks different as well, okay? So this is how Tinder essentially works. You swipe left for people that you don't like, right to people you like, and if both people like each other, then there's a match, you can start chatting and then maybe set up a date and find your true love once and for all, yes! Okay, if we go into the Glide data editor, we can see all the tables. There is 5 tables, one for all the users, one for the matches, and one for photos, and then select, which is for drop-down menus and other settings, and then an admin table that is being used for the admin dashboard, which you can see here. If we are logged in as the administrator, which we are right now, then we can see these 2 tabs, admin and users. And if I click on admin, we can see some stats as to what is the percentage of male versus female and other, then the total users, total swipes, total matches, and the average liked percentage for each profile, which means how much each profile is liked on the average. Okay, so now what we're going to do in this project is replicate this entire app from scratch so you can learn how to build this Tinder clone and at the same time learn how the logic works and therefore figure out a bunch of different things that you can do with Glide to create really compelling mobile apps. Let's do it. The first thing we're going to do is go to glidedapps.com and log in into Glide, or create a new account if you haven't already. And all you need to do is click the sign up button and then log in with an email address, ideally a Google email address or a Gmail address, because apps in Glide many times use Google Sheets. Therefore, Glide needs access to your Google Drive in order to create a Google Sheet that will store the data associated with your apps. So in my case, I'm going to use my Gmail account and I'm going to log in, and that will open your admin dashboard where you can see a list of all the apps you've created, then a bunch of apps for work, which are basically templates that you can try for free for 14 days, and then a lot of templates, free or paid, that you can use to help you get started faster. All right? In our case, we're going to start from the very scratch in the next lesson. So let's start right from scratch, and we're going to log in into our Glide account, and we're going to click on New Project, and we're going to call this Tinder project, and then we're going to select Glide app and then continue. And this time we're going to do it differently. Instead of Google Sheets, we're going to store all the data in Glide tables. It's just going to give us a little bit of better performance, and that way we won't have to deal with our data stored in two different places. All right, click on it, create app. And now the first thing we're going to do is create the tables. We could start trying to play with the interface and trying to create the swipe logic and all of that, but I think it's better to start with the data and then adding the user interface on top of that. I mean, if you're curious to see what the swipe component looks like, well, the tables are already pre-populated with some content, and you can easily convert the default content, in this case, the tile list here, to a swipe card, and then you could play with it. Now, for the swipe card component to work, you need to save the last swipe into a specific column, right? So you could create a column right now here, whatever you want to call it, swipes or something like that. And now you could select the component swipe list and then save it there. And now you would be able to swipe back and forth, right? But this is not what we want. What we want to do is start from scratch, and we could simply just delete this table if you want it. All right. And for sure, we're going to need two tables. One is going to be the users, so all the people that are trying to date each other. And the second table that we're going to need is a place to store the matches. And then we'll need other tables like for photos and administration and other stuff like that. But right now, what we need to do is just add a bunch of users. In this case, let's add 7 of each, male and female. And then we can start building the user interface with the users. So let me just create the tables that we're going to be using. And in this case, we already have name, email, and photo. And that's pretty much what we need to. So the next thing you would do is just create a bunch of new rows, right? And start entering some people's names. And I'm going to fast forward through this so you don't have to deal with this. But basically, I'm going to add people's names and then photos. For photos, the easiest thing you can do is simply double click on the cell for the photo, and you can grab a stock image. For example, if you're looking for females, you could look for the keyword woman, and then you could pick any person that you want to, and you could keep doing that for the same. You could do the same thing for men as well, right? So it's very easy to do. So I'm going to fast forward through this, and we'll have at least 7 of each, and then we'll have our user table completed. So I've created 14 profiles, 7 male and 7 female, and then we're going to change the row owner setting here to remove it, because otherwise users won't be able to see each other's profiles. That's a security measure to make sure that other people cannot see each other's data. And right now we don't need that, because obviously we want everybody to see each other's profiles. And now we could create a simple swipe card system here, and we could just delete that tab, and let's add a new tab here, and it's going to be called, well, Tinder. We could call it Tinder, and it's pulling data from the users table, and we're going to use the swipe card component. All right, and now we could start swiping, but we can't because we need to create a place where to store the last swipe. That's required in order for the app to remember where the last swipe was. So we're going to create a date type of column, swipe date, and it's going to be of the type date and time. Okay, and now we're going to be able to save, let's select the swipe list component and save it to the swipe date column. And now we can swipe. And if we go to the database, we can see how the swipe date is being stored, and therefore we can swipe left or right. Now in this case, when we swipe right, there is an action. The swipe component has two actions, the left action and the right action. The right action is set to show the detail screen for the screen, but in this case, we're going to remove it so we can swipe in both directions. And then we'll create a custom action to decide what happens when we swipe left, which will be just dismiss the profile. And when we swipe right, which would mean that we like that profile. Okay, so I'm going to say none for both actions right now, and now we can swipe in both directions. Of course, the issue here is that we are seeing everybody, right? We're seeing females and males, so we have to decide who is female, male, or other. And then once we decide which gender we're looking for, we'll only be shown those profiles that match that gender. Now we need to filter the results based on what is the target gender for the currently logged in person. So let's say that I'm looking for women, then I should only see women, and of course I see both. And the same for whoever is logged in. So for that, we're going to have to create two new columns under the users table. One specifying the gender of the user, and the other one specifying the target gender for that user. So let's say gender, and we're gonna say is text for now. So for everybody that is male, which in this case are 7 users, I'm just gonna do that. And for female, I'm gonna do this, right? And female, 7 of each, right? And then the target gender. And once we have this, we'll be able to basically filter by this. So let's say that in this case, everybody is heterosexual and they're just looking for the opposite, right? And of course, this can be changed in the future, and we're gonna add also other. So if somebody doesn't identify as female or male, then they can also search for either or, right? And we're just making it simple right now. Okay, so now that we have these two tables, what we can do is filter by the target in this case, right? So if I'm logged in as a guy that I'm looking for females, then under the results, right, under the results which are stored under the swipe list here, I should only see those users that match my target gender, right? And for that, we select the swipe list component, we go to options, and then we filter by the target gender, and in this case, it's going to match the gender of the person. So the gender of the person that is being shown right now should match, so is the target gender of the currently logged in user. And in my case is female, therefore all I should see right now is females. And if I log in as a female, let's say Katie, she will only see guys. And that's the simplest way to enforce the filtering. Now we're going to create the logic for matching. That means that when two different users like each other, there should be a match. So we have to store that somewhere. And of course, for that, we can use a table. So what we're going to do is create a matches table. So click on the plus button, and we're going to say new empty table. So a glide table. And we're going to call this matches. All right. Now, what do we have to store here? We should store the ID or the user ID of the person that liked a profile and the user ID of the person whose profile was liked. So now we know that those two people, somehow there is a connection. They don't like each other yet. We know that one of them likes one person, and then when the other person does the same but in reverse, then we will have a match. So both people have to like each other. So there has to be two rows that connect each of the users in order for the match to happen. So let's do that for just one user and see how that looks like. So by default, when you create a new glide table, then you have 4 rows here. So name, description, date, and owner. Obviously, we don't need any of these ones, so we can delete them. We can also rename them if the column type matches what we're looking for. Right? We can maybe leave the date. Well, we'll create a date one just to record when the match was made. And then under name, we're going to write here, edit. We're going to say that's our user A. And our user A is going to be the person that is doing the liking in this case. So whoever is logged in. And the column type is going to be text. And then we're going to duplicate this for the user B, or the person receiving the like. So we're going to duplicate this and simply say B. And we're going to enter a date column just to register when the match happened. So date, and we're going to use basic column, and it's going to be date and time. Done. All right. So now every time, so let's go to the app here. Let's say that it's me now, right? So I'm logged in as myself, and I'm looking at women here. So when I swipe to the left, it means that I don't like the person, so nothing happens. But I want to store when I swipe to the right. So if I click on the swipe list component, we can see that there's nothing happening either on the left action or the right action. So for the right action, I need to enter some kind of custom action that stores the value of me liking that person inside the matches table. So the problem right now is that if we go to the users table, the only thing I could store would be the email or the name or something like that. And as I mentioned before, it's better to use row IDs, because that means then people can change their names and the information related to that user profile won't be affected, right? So what we're going to do is create a row ID for the users table. So we click on new column and then select new row ID. We click done, and then we can see that the row ID has been generated, and every single user profile has a unique identifier under the row ID. And now what we can do is store the row ID for both the person doing the liking and the person receiving the liking inside the matches table. All right. So let's go to the app designer now, and there on the swipe list, we can change the right action. So we're going to create a new action. It's going to be a custom action, and we can say this swipe right, right? What we're going to do now is we have to store both the ID of the person that is doing the swiping and the person receiving the positive swiping or the yes swipe. So when we swipe right, what needs to happen? We need to create or save this action, the fact that the current user has liked somebody, inside the matches table. So that means we need to create a new row, and there is an action called precisely to create or add a new row. And then we have to select which sheet we're going to create a new row, which is going to be under matches. And then we have to enter the user ID of the person doing the liking. So we can grab that from the user profile row ID, and the user ID of the person receiving the right swipe, which is going to be the row ID of the person that is currently being shown on the screen. All right. And then the date can be the current date and time. With this, we should be able to save whenever somebody likes somebody inside the matches table. We're not doing a match yet. We're just storing the fact that people are liking each other. So let's save this and test it. Okay, so now I'm under Olivia's profile, and I'm going to swipe right to like. Okay. So if I go to the database right now, there should be a new record under matches saying that my user ID likes Olivia's user ID. All right. We can delete the first row. We don't need that one. Okay. And now whenever somebody likes somebody, that will be stored here. So now let's say that Olivia likes me. So user B likes user A. That's when a match will happen. And we're going to have to create the logic to identify that a match has happened. For now, let's log in as Olivia and do the same thing. So I'm going to log in as Olivia, and I'm going to swipe left until I find my profile, Miguel Hernandez, and I'm going to swipe right. So in theory, now there should have been a match, because if we go here under matches, we can see that I like Olivia and Olivia likes me. Now that we're storing that people like each other, we have to figure out how to determine when a match has happened. And for this, we have to use some nifty logic. And this is what I love about Glide. You can do amazing things. So let's say that I'm swiping then somehow I need to figure out that what's going on inside the matches table. And when I can find that the person that I'm liking right now likes me back, then we have to take an action saying, hey, you had a match. So how do we do that? Somehow we have to retrieve the information that we have inside the matches table, inside the users table, and then figuring out if there is a mutual match. So for that, we have to find this combination. We have to find the combination of user A ID plus user B ID and vice versa. When that combination happens both ways, we know there is a match. Let me show you how we're going to do that. We're going to create a new row that combines both my user ID and the user ID of any of the profiles that exist, right? And then we're going to look for that relation inside the matches table. Let me show you how that works. So I'm going to create a new row, which is going to be called user A dash user B. And this is going to be a template type of column where we're going to combine both my ID with the ID of the user profile. And we're going to do that by replacing now A with my current row ID and B with the user ID. All right, so now we've created a column that combines both user A and user B's ID. And then we can try to find that combo inside the matches, right? In the matches table. So how do we do that? We have to create a relation column. But the problem is that right now there's not such a column that combines both A and B users under the matches table, and therefore we won't find any matches unless we create it. So we have to create another template column here under the matches table that is going to create that combo of user IDs. So the same thing that we did before, we're going to say here user A dash user B, and it's going to be a template column, and we're going to do A dash B, and A is going to be the user A, and B is going to be the user B. And now we have that combo column. So now we can try to match this combo column with the newly created combo column here using a relation column. And then we'll find out if there's any matches, right? So we're going to do the user A, B rel, and we're going to do a relation column. We're going to try to match that user ID combo, AB combo, with under matches the user AB combo, and we can see we already have a match. That is fantastic. So what is this telling us? This is telling us that user A, which is now the currently logged in user, that's Olivia, likes this me, he likes me, the first user. But the big question is, does me like Olivia? So now we have to do the same thing with a different combo, which is, does user B like user A? And for that, we need to duplicate this and reverse the order of the IDs. So we're going to duplicate that one. And instead of user A, we're going to say user B dash user A. Okay. And now we can also do the same thing here, B A. All right. And as soon as we did it, we actually updated the results. So we're basically doing the inverse, and we're going to duplicate the relation column to see if there's in fact a reverse match, which means we both like each other, and therefore we could calculate, or we know that there is a match. So we're going to duplicate that, and we're just going to do user B dash user A rel, and we're going to try to match now the inverse inside the users table, right? And we can see that in fact the reverse also shows a match, right? Therefore we like each other, which we knew that because I just did it on purpose to like each other. Let me show you what happens if Olivia likes another guy, let's say Peter? So we go back to our app editor here, and now we have Peter. So remember, right means like, left doesn't like. So right, the moment I say right, there should be a match of IDs, but it's not going to be reciprocal. Let me just do that, swipe right. Now that means Olivia likes Peter, so there should be a match here with Peter. And in fact, there is, which has recorded that Olivia, user A, likes Peter, but there is no reciprocal connection here, right? So therefore, there won't be a match until Peter does the same thing. Do that. Let's log in as Peter. So we can click here under Peter. Now we go back to the app, and now Peter has to like Olivia. So we have left, 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 Olivia. Boom. Now we should see the reciprocal liking, and in fact we do. Both users like each other. Now we can register that a match has happened. How are you feeling, my dear YouTube viewer? Are you lost? Do you need help to follow along? Find all the answers and learn to build awesome mobile apps without coding in my new course at grumo.com/goglide. You will go from zero to glide master in just 8 hours. Use the coupon YouTubeLove for a 50% discount. Sounds good? Let's keep going, my little saltamontes. So now we can identify whether people like each other, because we're using these relation columns to identify whether the ID combo of the currently user and the liked user and vice versa shows a match, and when both appear, that means that there is a match. But now we have to use some logic to identify and store the fact that the match has happened. And for that, we're going to use a combination of conditional columns and math columns. All right, so bear with me because this is amazing. All right, so we're going to create a conditional column, which is going to be called match A. We could say if we want it, right? Just to show that it's conditional. What we're going to do here is simply create a conditional statement that is going to look for whether there is an actual match for the combo AB users. So if it's not empty, we found a match, and we're going to assign a value of 1 to that. And otherwise, it's a value of 0, okay? So look at what happened. If the first condition that user A likes user B, then we add a 1, right? Otherwise, it's 0. Now we're going to duplicate this to do the same for the reverse. So when user B likes user A, which means that now they like each other. Well, at least there is a reverse connection, okay? And guess what happens? Now we have two columns that are identifying numerically whether there is a match one way or the other. Now, if there's only one match, then either or of these columns is going to be 1, right? Not both are going to be 1. So what can we do now? We can use a math column to sum these two columns. So when we get 2, when we get 1 plus 1, 2, that means that there's been a match. Otherwise, it's going to be either 0 or 1. So only there is a match when the summation or the addition of these two columns is 2. This is just so cool. I love logic. All right, so now we're going to create a math column that is simply going to add, so match A plus match B, and that's going to be a math column. We're going to say A plus B, where A is match A and the other one is match B. I have to fix the title of the second column, right? We're going to get rid of the decimals, and now we're going to fix the title of the match B column. Edit. So that should be match B if, to see if the reciprocal connection happens. And guess what? Now, in fact, when there is a match, there is a 2. And now we could identify this. We could have a little text column showing that, in fact, there has been a match, just to have like a visual identifier. Sometimes that helps. So we're going to call this match txt. And we're going to use this as an if-then statement, and we're going to say when the summation is equal to, we're going to say match and enter done, right? So there you go. Now we know there is a match because both users like each other. We added some conditional statement logic to verify the match by adding a numerical value of 1, and then we add it, and only when there is a mutual match we get 2, and therefore we can record the fact that there's been a match. How cool and amazing is that? So now we can identify whether a match has happened or not. And we can use this information to decide what happens in the actual user interface, right? So right now, if we go to swipe list on the right action, we need to figure out if a match has happened. Right now, all we're doing is every time somebody likes somebody else, we just add a new row under matches saying that that like has happened, right? So now we have to identify whether the reciprocal like already was there. In other words, that the person we are liking already liked us, and now there's a mutual liking, and therefore we can say, hey, there is a match. So for that, we need to use a conditional statement before we add any kind of information or rows to the matches table. And that's going to be that we're going to look for this condition. So if I like the person, so the connection that I like the person is empty. So in other words, I haven't liked that person yet, okay? So it's empty. And the reciprocal is also empty. That means that there hasn't been a match yet. So the reciprocal would be that the person that I'm liking is not liked me yet, okay? So it's empty. Then we just can record that I like the person. Okay. A match only happens when I like the person and I can identify or find out that the person already liked me, which means the following. I'm just going to add another condition saying that when me liking the other person is going to be empty, which is going to be empty for sure because I haven't liked the person. I mean, what I'm trying to do here is try to avoid to write twice the fact that I liked somebody, right? So if I already liked somebody, then I don't need to record and add another row, right? So you can like somebody as many times as you want to, but that's only going to be written once, right? So that's why I'm checking whether I like the person or not, which means whether there is a match for the AB user ID combo, right? So if it's empty, that's that I like the person, and this is where the match happens. The reciprocal connection is not empty, which means the person already liked me. There is a record that the person already liked me. Now there is a match, and now I can connect both people. And we can either just send a message saying notification, there is a match. There is a match. Okay. There you go, because now we know there is a match. And then what should we do when there is a match? Well, we should take them to a separate screen where they can start talking to each other. And to do that, we can simply add another action saying show detail screen. It's going to be the screen detail for the relation inside the matches. So there you go, I just do that. And now we'll see how this works when there is a match. So let's try this really quickly. Just verify that the logic is correct. When I like somebody and I haven't liked them before, I simply record the fact that I like somebody. When I like somebody and I find out that that person liked me, that means that there has been a match. And what I should do also is add the fact that I still need to record the fact that I like the person. So I'm just going to add a row under the matches table. And that's going to contain, again, my user ID, the person's user ID, the person that I'm liking user ID. And this could be empty. And then we need the date, which is going to be the current date and time. Perfect. So I'm going to save this. And now we're going to force a match. Let's say that Peter likes Katie. So right swipe. And now we're going to go to Katie's profile. And Katie is going to like Peter. So let's find out Peter. Where is Peter? There we go. So when I swipe right now, there's going to be a mutual match. We're going to identify that, and there has to be a message saying there is a match, and it's going to take me to a detailed screen where we could program a chat. All right, let's do that. Boom, there is a match. Of course, this doesn't look right, the design. We can fix that later on, but we just basically created a Tinder clone logic. Now the rest of the stuff we have to do is simply make things pretty, but the basic functionality, which is filtering by the gender that we're looking for and then identifying matches, is working. And that is literally 90% of what Tinder does. Everything else is just filtering and making things look pretty. Congratulations if you made it up to here. You're the best in the world. Great, we have the matching logic working. Now we need to do something when a match happens, which we're taking them to a screen where they can chat to each other. So we obviously have to implement the chat, and then we also need a way to save all the matches so we can go back to the matches and keep talking, right? So right now, we would need to add a chat. Here we can do it in this screen, but obviously that doesn't look right because it's all ugly. And here we wanna, let's show maybe the avatar picture or the picture of the user that we're chatting to, and then the chat. So let me just change this, get rid of this, and the email. Obviously, we're not going to be disclosing emails because we just want to keep this private. And well, the user ID right now. So the title is not showing anything. It should show the picture of the user you're chatting to. So because we're currently on the matches table, we don't have access to the user's pictures. So we need to go to the matches table, and we have to retrieve the user's image. So we're going to do that by creating a relation column, which is going to be, in this case, user B photo. Remember, the user A is always the currently logged in user. So we want to show the person we're talking to, which means it's the other person, not the currently logged in user. So user B photo, user rel. We're going to create the relation first with the users table, right? And we're going to create a relation column, and we're going to match the user BID under the users table row ID. And there you go. And we have the relation made. Now we can retrieve the photo and the name, right? So user B name, it's going to be a lookup column. We're going to use the newly created relation column to retrieve the name. And then we're going to duplicate this to retrieve the photo. All right, so lookup, if that's correct. And we're going to retrieve the photo from the relation. Now we can display that under the place where we're going to have the chat. So under title, we're going to retrieve the new image, the user photo, and the name for the title. And we can change this to maybe something like that. There you go. So now when we're chatting to somebody, well, we know who we're chatting to at least. And the next thing we need to have is the chat part, which in Glide is very simple. We can use a comment component, so comment, okay, and now they could start chatting to each other. So I could say, hey, how are you doing? The problem is that when we click on the comments component, right, there is a value here. It's called data, and it's called topic. And right now, the topic is basically a way to identify chats and make them unique. So the value of the chat has to be unique to both people that are part of the match. Otherwise, other people will be able to see the chat. And this is where we need to go back to the logic and add some kind of way to create a unique identifier for each match. All right? And we're going to do that next. we're going to create the logic that makes each chat private so nobody else can see it. And for that, if we select the chat, it's called comments in Glide, then the topic has to be unique. And let's say that we want to use the user AB dash user B combo ID, because that seems pretty unique, to store the chats, right? And now I'm gonna pretend to chat with Peter. I'm Katie, and I'm pretending to chat with Peter. I'm gonna say, "Hi, Peter." Okay, so I posted. Great. Now, if I log in as Peter, I should be able to see that Katie just chatted to me. So let's log in as Peter. Okay, I'm logged in as Peter. And the problem is that this hasn't changed to Katie because we're still under the Katie Peter screen, but we need to be under the Peter Katie screen. So for that, we should be able to retrieve the matches, right? So let me just create a new tab here called matches. And I'm going to retrieve the matches from here, matches. Now we can see here all the people that are under the matches. So we have to filter by only the matches that Peter has. And remember that we created some logic under the users table to figure out who is matched with who, using some math columns here, right? So right now, the only match, well, there's two matches actually. Peter has two matches right now. So match and match. So we're going to only retrieve the user profiles where the value of the match is actually match, or is 2 actually, is 2, right? So for that, we're going to filter by that column. So we click on list, options, filter, where, and we actually grabbing the wrong table. So we go back to the matches table and we're gonna grab this from the users, because the fact that there is a match or not is stored under the users table. So now we can do the filtering. Click on the list component, go to options, and we're going to filter where the match A plus match B is equal to, which means there is a match, and there should be 2 results. There you go. So now we can always go back to our matches. And we were trying to create the chat for both Katie and Peter and Katie. So it should be unique to both. And as you can see here, nothing is showing. And that's not what we wanted. So let me just click delete this, and we're going to, the name is showing. We need the image. The image of the person. Oh, the problem is that this is taking us to the users table. So we have to change the logic so it takes us, when we click on the matches table, it takes us to the match table, right? Okay, so let me fix this. Just click on the list, and now it's showing us the detail for this item, and it's showing us not the actual match. Remember that the matches are under the match table, right? The actual data of the matches. So we need to be taken, when we click in any of the matches, to the matches table. And right now we'll be taken to the detail screen for this item, which is the users table, but we can change that really quickly by clicking on the action, and instead of data taking us to this item, we're gonna be taken to the user AB relation. Let's try this right now. And there you go. Now that looks correct. However, if you remember, Katie already said hi to Peter, but we're not seeing this. And this is where the problem relies. Let's try this again, right? So we go back to Katie, and she already said hi, Peter, but Peter is not seeing this. And the reason why is because when we go to the comments component, this ID is not unique to each other, because it actually changes depending on who is logged in. So we need to create an ID that is unique to this specific match. All right, so to do that, we have to go to the matches table. We're gonna create a new column, which is going to be called maybe chat ID. It's going to be a unique ID of the type text. And every time there is a match, we're going to store this. So The first thing we're going to do is store, every time somebody likes somebody, we're going to record a chat ID. Then when there is a match, we're going to store that chat ID also in the matches table, and we're going to assign to the comment or chat component that unique ID. So every time they chat to each other, that component is only related to that specific ID, and only them can see that chat. So the way to do that is we go back to the design editor and we go to the swiping screen and we click on the swipe list component, and under the right action, which is when we like somebody, we're going to store a unique ID for a future chat, which is going to happen if there is a match. Okay, so we go and click edit action. And now when we add the new row, when there is an initial liking, we're also going to add a unique identifier to the chat ID, and simply we go here and we click on the three dots and we click on unique identifier. All right, boom, and then we can save that. So every time somebody likes somebody, we're going to store that unique identifier. So right now, Katie is going to like Brad and see what happens. All right, and on the background, there should be a new record saying that Katie likes Brad, which is the last record here, but we just added a unique ID to the chat, and we're going to use this ID to make sure that the chat is unique to both people that are talking to each other. The trick is that when somebody likes somebody back, we have to grab this same chat ID and add it to that record, and then we will be able to verify that both have the same chat ID, and therefore we can assign that chat ID to that conversation, to that chat. Okay? This will happen again under the swipe component, right action, edit action. Here we're already recording the unique identifier when somebody likes somebody else, but when there is a match, we have to grab this same unique identifier, we have to store it somewhere, and then what we need to do is add it to the chat ID of the match. So we're using the same chat ID for both when somebody likes somebody and when the match happens. All right, so now we need to go to the users table and we're going to retrieve the chat ID for any match, for any record, right? So we're going to add a new lookup table. So and this is going to be the chat ID for, let's say, remember that every match needs to have two people liking each other. So it's going to be the chat ID either for the A, B user, so current user liking each other, or the other user liking each other, vice versa. And then we're going to use a lookup table, and we're going to look at column, and we're going to look under the A-B relation, we're going to look for the chat ID if there is one. And right now there is one here. And the same thing for the vice versa, right? So I'm going to duplicate this, and it's going to be the chat ID BA, and we're going to use the other relation, the BA relation. Okay, done. All right. And then in order for us to write the unique chat ID to somebody that doesn't have it, to a new match, we have to store it somewhere. We have to create that column that we can grab that unique chat ID from. And for that, we're going to use a conditional column, right? Which is going to be the chat ID if, and it's going to be a conditional column. And what we're going to look for is to make sure that there's always a value here, even if one of the two lookups is empty. So if, for example, let's go here, the lookup for the chat ID AB is empty, we're gonna grab the other one, right? Because remember, we are writing the chat ID the first time somebody like each other. So it's just a matter of finding that ID. We know it's there, but when there is a match, we're not writing a new unique ID, we're grabbing the existing unique ID that happened when the person liked us first, okay? So we're going to say if it's empty, right? We're just simply gonna write the other value, okay? And if it's not empty, we'll just grab the existing value. Okay, so now you can see that regardless of whether one is empty or not, we're always going to grab a chat ID value, which means, again, let's just rewind a little bit here. I know this is a little bit confusing. That, remember, when somebody likes each other for the first time, we save a unique chat ID, right? But in order for the chat to be unique, we have to use the same chat ID for both connections. Me liking somebody, somebody liking me. Because when there is a match, we cannot write a new unique ID, because then they won't match, the chat IDs won't match. What we're gonna do is grab the existing chat ID of the person liking me originally, and then using that and storing that under the matches table here, right? Under the matches table, because every time there is a match, remember, every time there's a match, there has to be two rows where both people like each other. What we're going to make sure is that the chat ID for those two records that match each other, that chat ID is the same, and then we can use that chat ID and assign it to the chat component to make sure that that chat is unique between those two people. All right. So now that we have that column here, right, we can grab the chat ID if, and under the swipe component, write action, we can, remember, originally we were writing the chat ID as a unique identifier. Now we have to grab that unique identifier from the person that liked us originally, and we already have it, and write it into the chat ID of the new matching record. So it's here. It's going to be under chat ID if. Okay, and I'm going to click save, and I'm going to show you how this works. Now we're going to test the matches chats to make sure that the logic works in order for people to have private chats. Okay, so to start from scratch, we can simply delete all the matches, select all the matches and click delete. Now nobody's matched with anybody, and now let's pretend that we're Katie and we like Frank. All right, so boom, we like Frank. We'll go back to the matches table, and we can see that Katie likes Frank. Great. But on top of that, we've created a unique chat ID. Perfect. So when Frank likes Katie, we have to write the same chat ID, okay? And we're going to use that chat ID to create the chat component that is unique to that specific match. So now we're going to log in as Frank, and Frank is going to like Katie. La 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 la. Li li li. Okay, Katie, I like her. Fantastic. There is a match. We're taking to the unique chat. Still not unique, but because we're going to have to fix something. But look at that. These two chat IDs are the same because when there was a match, we made sure that we grabbed the unique chat ID original from that match, and we wrote it to the new row. And now we can assign this ID to the chat. So we're going to select the actual chat, and we're going to make sure that instead for the topic, we're going to grab the chat ID. And now we know this is a chat unique to both users. So now Frank is going to say, hey, Katie. All right. And now if I logged in as Katie, right, I'm going to log in as Katie. And I'm going to go to the matches for Katie. Guess what? We can see Frank's message, and I can reply. Hi, Frank. Post. All right. And now we go back to pretend that we're logged in as Frank. And boom, we just created a private chat. This is fantastic, bombastic, amazing. And I hope that you were able to follow along, because I know this is a little bit complex. But there you go. This is what you can do with Glide. Just amazing things. The next thing we're going to do is create a user profile so people can set their search preferences, like what gender you're looking for, what is the age range, and the distance from where your location is, right? So for that, we need to create a new tab, and we're going to call this profile, right? So we click on the new tab. We say this is going to be our profile. We can enter maybe a smiley face as the profile, or face. There you go. Perfect. And now we have to filter by the currently logged in user. So the way we can do that is by going to options, by going to the actual list and filtering to make sure that it only shows the currently logged in user. And to do that, we select the list and we're going to filter where the row ID matches is the currently logged in user ID. And that in this case is Frank. If it was somebody else, Katie, you can see how that's going to change, right? Now we want to show the screen. So all we have to do is click on list and go to the details. And there you go. We have all the information here, but that's a lot of information that we don't need to. And we can display, I guess, the email if we wanted, but we're just gonna get rid of that for right now. And maybe change this to just a profile type of image. And then under the details, instead of the gender, we could have the email. And this is only visible to the currently logged in user, right? Another thing we can do is the person is not logged in. They shouldn't be able to see any kind of profile. So to do that, we can check whether their user profile has a row ID. And if there's no row ID, that means that there is no user logged in. So under options, we can check for row ID is not empty. So we log out as a normal user, as a person that is not logged in, then we don't see any information, right? If we don't want to display the tab itself, we could go to options and actually go to visibility and make sure that the user row ID is not empty, right? There you go. And if I log in as Katie, then she can see both the profile information and the profile tab. The next thing we can do is add more personal information, like maybe a little bio or something like that. But right now, the most important thing is for each profile to be able to set their search preferences. And for that, we're going to need a few columns, new columns under the user profiles. And one is going to be the minimum age and maximum age. So we're going to enter minimum age, and that's going to be a type of number column and no decimals. And then we're going to duplicate this and we're going to say max age, okay? And it's also going to be number, okay. So now we have minimum and maximum age. The next thing is for users to set their current city, and based on the city, we'll figure out how far they are from the person they're looking at. Then we will use that to calculate the distance between their city and the person that they're looking at, and also set a radius for how far they want to get matches from. So we're just going to type here city. And what we're going to do is compare that city with the city of the people that are looking at, and then get the distance and see whether that distance matches within the radius of the people that are looking for. So I'm going to click city, type text, and I'm just going to enter quickly some cities, and then we'll do the calculation of when we're comparing the city distances. The great thing about Glide is that makes calculating distances very easy. All we need to do now is create a new column called distance to target in this case. And all we're going to do is simply calculate the distance. And that's very easily done with the distance computed column. And we're going to say from our user profile's city to the person that we're looking out right now for their city. And you can see how we just found out the distances. This is extremely fast, and it would take a long time to program this manually, but they're using some kind of API in the background that allows you to geolocate cities by just typing the name of the city, and then you can put two different city names and it calculates the distance between either kilometers or miles. In this case, I'm European, so I stick to the metric system. And there you go. You have some pretty accurate distances, and we can use that for our filtering process. And click done to save it. Now we can create a column for users to store the maximum distance that they are willing to get matches from and or results from. And then, so we're just going to create another new number type of column, and that's going to be the, call it distance, radius or something like that. And a number type of column. And we're going to just store it with no decimals. And here people would enter that distance, right? So for example, let's say that, people are saying 80 kilometers. When they start, they haven't selected any distance. So in order to get any results, we should have a default distance. And we could say that that default distance is 100 kilometers. So for that, we need to just create kind of like a column with a static value. Let's say in this case, like distance default, and that's going to be a number column. No, it's going to be, a math column. And we're just going to type 100 there with no decimals. And that's going to be our default distance radius for providing results. We could obviously change this on global settings later on, but we're going to take care of settings globally when we create an admin dashboard. But now, if people don't enter anything, we're going to do a search within 100 kilometers. So we're going to use a conditional column, distance if, and it's just going to say that if the distance radio is empty, then we're going to use the default value, which is 100. Otherwise, we're going to grab their choice for the radius. And that way, users are always going to get results, even if they haven't selected a default search radius. Hey, are you still here but can't make head or tails of what I'm teaching you? Oh, poor you. Find all the answers and learn to build awesome mobile apps without coding in my new course at grumo.com/GoGlide. You will go from 0 to Glide Master in 8 hours. Use the coupon YouTubeLive for a 50% discount. Sounds good? Let's keep going, my little saltamontecitos. Now we can create the search filters under the user profile. So when they log in, they can set what they're looking for, female, age range, and distance, and then boom, they can start finding people that match that criteria. So let's just enter here a little title, text title, and it's going to be text, and it's going to be size headline 2, and it's going to be custom title. Is going to say, what are you looking for? Okay, we're going to center it. And now we're going to enter the filtering options. So first of all, we have to ask them, what are you looking for? Okay, so that would be a choice component. They can select whether they're male, female, or other. And we can grab the choices from, well, we're going to have to create a choices table so we can store all the different choices. Right now, there's only 2 genders, right? And if we want to have more genders, then we have to create a table where we can grab all the different choices. Because if I go to users and I grab the values from, like, let's say, gender, I don't know if we're going to get any actual results. Yeah, we get 2 results here. But the reality is that when you have drop-down menus, let's say that there was no users or they were all female, then we wouldn't get any results, because now it's just pulling these 2 results from the users table, and there is 2 genders here, right? But ideally, what you do when you have drop-down menus is that you create a new table, and you could create it's a new empty table, and we're gonna call these choices or drop-downs or something like that. And here is where you can enter new choices, right? So I'm going to add a new row. I'm going to give this you should always have, instead of the actual name of the choice, like female or male, you should have an ID. And in this case, we don't have to create complex, unique IDs. We just can name them 1, 2, 3, 4. And that way, if we want to change the language from female to something in Spanish like mujer or hombre, then you can change the values of the drop-down menus, and that will not affect the logic. So in this case, I'm just going to change this to a number column with precision 1, and let's say that I want 3 choices, 1, 2, 3 choices, and for the description, it's going to be the gender. Okay, so that is the gender. There could be the same drop-down menu, but we're gonna have a drop-down menu for people to select their own gender, and a different drop-down menu for people to select their target gender. So in this case is going to be the profile gender of, so we could say the gender or the profile, and it's going to be either male, female, or let's just say other. And then we're going to duplicate this for the target, gender target, and it's going to be, oh no, let me just delete that. It's going to be male, female, and in this case, any gender. So what I'm trying to do here is, for example, when somebody's selecting their gender, they could say I'm male, female, or other. And when they're looking for people, they could say I'm looking for male, female. You could also say other, or if you want to use a different variation of it, then you can say, well, any gender. It doesn't matter whether male, female, or any person within the LGBTQ plus community, right? And of course, you could add any genders or modify any genders to suit your specific needs. Perfect. Now we don't need the date column, so I'm gonna delete that. Okay, and I don't need the owner column either. Delete it. Okay. Now, since we've created a specific table to select genders with values that are going to be assigned to each gender, so 1, 2, 3, this is going to help us later doing filtering. What we can do is go to the users table and change the target genders to actual numeric values, and then retrieve the value of the gender based on what it was entered here. So here it should be, let's edit this and make this a number type of column. And then we're going to enter 1 for male and 2 for female, right? And 1 for male. Okay, and we're gonna change the precision to 1. We can use now this value to retrieve the actual text value of the gender selection. In this case, this is the gender of the person, not of the target. So we have to do the same thing for the target. Actually, no, this is for the target. For the person's gender, this is the 1, okay? And we can change this to the right values. Okay, now we have to change this to a numeric value. So it's going to be number precision 1. And what they're looking, in this case, is going to be the opposite. So we're going to change this to the opposite. Okay, and now we can retrieve the actual text value from the choices table. So we're going to have to create 2 relation columns. All right, so it's going to be gender profile rel. Okay, relation. We're going to grab the gender profile of the profile, and we're going to find it on matches. And that should be, instead of called name, should be called ID. Let's see, let's call it ID. Here under choices, we call it name, but this is basically an ID, right? So choice ID, for example. Okay, let's go back to users. All right, and now we're going to do the same thing, duplicate this for the target. So target rel, we're just trying to retrieve the value of the target gender from the choices at target gender. Okay. And now we're going to do the same thing for the gender target. So we're going to create another relation column. So we're going to duplicate the existing one, and we're going to call this target rel. And again, we're going to match in this case, the target gender value with the same thing with the ID inside the choices table. And we can see now that, but we want to retrieve the actual text word here, which has retrieved the relation. So we're going to do a lookup table for gender. Let's call it just text, because we're retrieving the text, right? So we're going to do a lookup, and we're going to look up at the gender profile word. We're going to duplicate this to the same thing for the gender target word, and gender target word in this case is gender target. Perfect. There you go. So now we can see those words and we can use this to display them inside our profile. But the great thing is that now we can use a drop-down menu that is not reliant on the actual words, but on ID, so we can change the word later on for the genders, okay? And we can go to the user profile and say, what are we looking for? So we can we can select that, and now we're going to grab the values of the drop-down menu from the choices, right? And in this case, we're looking, it's not the gender profile, it's gonna be the target, okay? So those are the values, okay? So now the values are going to be the choice ID, a numeric value, but we're gonna display it as the text word that is associated with that value. So when we look at here, we can see we can select either male, female, or any gender. And where are we gonna write this? We're gonna write that to the target gender column inside the user profiles, okay? And we can change the title of the drop-down menu to looking for, and instead of having a drop-down menu, since we only have 3 choices right now, we can make it look pretty and select under style, segmented, and we're gonna make it required. And there you go. Now Katie or anybody that's logged in can select what they want to look for, right? And that will be stored in their preferences. So that is one preference. The other thing is the minimum and maximum age. So for that, we're gonna have to enter a number type of entry. So number entry, and we're going to call this min age, and we're going to write that down to the min age. And in this case, we could say, well, what is the minimum age? It should be at least over 8. So the minimum value is going to be 18. So if you try to enter something below that, then it should give an error. And we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to enter the max age now. And there's not going to be a limit on the max age. So we don't have to have that, but we're going to write it to the max age column inside the user profiles. So what's the last thing? The choices for the distances. So we can either get people to enter manually a distance within what radius they should get results from, or we could create another drop-down menu with several options. So let's do that because it makes it simpler just to have people to select than to enter a numeric value. So here we can have a new column called radius or something like that. Okay, and it's going to be a number type of column. And we're going to enter a bunch of different values here. 10, 20, 40, let's add another one, 60, and let's say 80 kilometers. Now we can use these options under the profile, and we're going to add a new select. We could duplicate this one, another choice component, and we're going to grab the options from, let me just select it, from choices, and instead of the choice ID, it's going to be the radius, and it's going to be the value. We're going to display it as radius, and it's going to be required. Okay, the same for minimum age should be required as well. Hold on, it's writing to the target gender. It should be write to the distance radius. Okay, perfect. Here we have to change the title to distance, for example, and just say that is in kilometers. Okay. So, and then we can just enter some values here. Let's say 18 to 45 or something like that. And those values, at the moment you enter them, they're already entered inside that user profiles preferences. And we can use now, we have all the data that we would need to start doing filtering. So when they are swiping, they only get the results that match their preferences. Now we're going to enforce the user preferences under the results. There are 3 criteria that the results need to match. One is the gender, the second is the age range, and the third is the distance. So we're going to create 3 columns under the user profile table that are going to check whether these three conditions are true. And we can do this with conditional columns. So let's create the first one. We're going to check for the gender. So is within gender, and it's going to be a conditional if and then else type of column. And we're going to check if the gender of the person we're looking at equals the setting for the currently logged in user as the target gender. And if it's true, we're going to say 1. And if it's not, we're going to say 0. Okay? Now we're going to do the same thing for within age range. And to do so, we're going to duplicate the is within gender, so it matches the target gender. We're going to duplicate that and create another conditional column, and it's going to call is within age. And we need two conditions. One to check whether the age of the user that we're looking at, so the age. Oh, I see, we didn't enter the age. So users need to enter their age so we can figure out if they are within the age range that we're looking for. So we need another column called age, and we're gonna make it number and precision 1. Okay, and now let's enter some ages here really quickly. 25, 20, 30, 40, 30, 31. Okay, and now we can do the comparison. Okay, so let's duplicate that conditional column, and we're gonna say is within age, and we're going to see that if the age is less than the minimum age that the currently logged in user has set, so minimum age, then the value is going to be 0. And the same thing if the age of the user that we're looking at is greater than the maximum age that the user has set as their limit. Okay, that would be 0. Otherwise is 1. Okay, and we're going to check that. We're logged in as Katie, and Katie has set up a very big range for ages, so that's why all the profiles match. They have a 1, but if we change that to, let's say, let's go to the minimum age here, and they say it's going from 18 to 45. So let's say 18 to 25, right? We'll see how there's a bunch of people that don't match anymore, right? So there's actually, now there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 matches. Okay, so that is working. The next condition is to see whether it's within the distance set. So we're going to duplicate this and create another condition column. It's going to be called is within distance. And well, we're going to delete these two conditions, or basically change these ones, and we're going to say if the currently logged in the distance right now. Remember that if there was no set, we were going to say 100 kilometers by default. And if they have a setting, we're going to use the setting. That's why we were using a conditional column to calculate the default distance. If it's greater than or equal of the distance to the target, then we're going to say 1. In other words, it means that if the setting for the maximum distance is greater than the actual distance, which means that it's within the distance to the target, we're going to say 1, otherwise 0. And we have done. And there you go. Now we have the 3 conditions. So we should only show profiles that match the 3 conditions. And we know that if we add the values of the conditions that match, we should get 3. So only the profiles whose aggregate of the conditions is 3 should be shown. So we can create a math column now called show result, for example. And we're going to say math. No, we're going to add it. So this is the math. This is the conditions math, for example, where we're going to simply add those 3 conditions. So it's going to be math. We're going to say A plus B plus C, where A is the first condition, is within gender, B is the second condition, is within age, and C is the third condition, is within distance. And we can see right now with precision 1, we can see the ones that have 3 as a result. And this is great because now we can go to the results here under the swiping tab, Tinder, and we can go to the swipe component, and under options, we had one filter. We're just gonna get rid of that filter because we need to make sure that we only show people that meet the 3 conditions. In other words, where the conditions math is equal 3. And there you go. Now we should have a lot less results. 1, 2. So it's only 2 people that match that condition, right? Let's see if that's correct here. Under users 1 and 2. Only those 2 user profiles meet the 3 conditions. The other thing we should do, let's say that Katie is looking for females, then she's gonna find herself under the results. For example, if she's looking for females, and let's just increase the maximum age range here to make sure we get more results. Guess what happens? She found herself. That doesn't make sense. So we have to add another condition, another filter to the results that says that and the row ID of the user doesn't match is not the row ID of the currently logged in user. And that way we can make sure that people don't match themselves. Now we're going to show under the user profile how many results match the current criteria. And before I do that, I also want to show you a different way of filtering whether the current profile matches all the criteria. And right now we were using just a math column and we were adding all the values. And if the 3 conditions were met, then we would add them, and if you get a 3, it's correct. Now, the problem is that if you add more conditions in the future, then you have to keep updating the values. So let's say there is 4 conditions in the future, then you only should show people that whose aggregate of the conditions sums 4. So a different way of doing this is creating a math column that instead of adding, multiplies. Because the moment a condition is not met, you're going to multiply by 0, and then the result is going to be 0, right? So right now, regardless of the number of conditions or criteria, it's going to be a binary result, either 1 or 0, because we're multiplying, okay? And then all we have to do when we go to our swipe component is under options, make sure that the conditions math equals 1. Right? And then now it doesn't matter how many conditions we need to meet, then we don't have to change the logic here. Now the next thing we can do is, since now we can count the number of matches, is display this when people update their filtering criteria so they can see whether they are getting any results or not. So all we need to do is sum all these values, and that way we will have the number of matches. So we're going to simply use a roll-up column. It's going to be match count, or match not, in this case it's not matches, is result count. Results that match the criteria inside the user's profile. So it's going to be a roll-up column where we're going to sum the conditions math. We're going to sum it, right? And in this case, Katie, is getting 7 results, and we could create a template just to make that readable when we display that inside the user profile. So results count txt template x results, replace x for the number of results, and we have 7 results. And if we wanted, we could put that in parentheses, or we can put that in another template, because right now under user profile we have distance in kilometers, and we could show the results next to the distance or somewhere else, or maybe at the bottom we could say okay, I like that. So let's just do that. Number of results. We could create just a table, maybe a table one. Let's see. Create a table component. And we're going to call that, we're going to grab the value from results count. and results count. And we can see now that we're grabbing the total results, but if we change it, we should get different results based on what we're selecting, right? See? So at distance 20 kilometers, we get 2 results, 7 results at 60. But if we change the age range, we should get less people, right? And you can see how it's updated in real time, which is pretty amazing, right? And for male, female, and any gender, we get 0 results. Okay, so here we could change this to other. In a sense, I want to match people that don't identify either as male or female or any gender. If you say any gender, then we should get the combined results of both male and female, which should be 14, right? So you can change the logic to match genders based on how you want the app to work. So in this case, actually, this should be other, people that identify of other. Although on a previous version of this app, what I did is that when you selected any gender, it would match male, female, and other at the same time, right? So right now we could just say, change this to, we could display this as simply the gender profile options, right? And nobody identifies as other, so I'm getting 0 results. For females, we're getting 4 results. And if we were to now go to our swiping tab, there should be only 4 results for women. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to the beginning, okay? So that's really cool. Our filtering process is working really well. We can display the amount of results, and we're filtering by 3 combined criteria: gender, age range, and distance. How cool is that? This would have taken weeks, if not months, to program with native code. Just say thanks that Glide exists. Bada bing bam boom. Yeah. Now we're going to allow users to edit their profile, and that is pretty straightforward. You just go to the profile tab, and then you click on edit form and say allow users to edit. And you can also add a condition making sure that the row ID of the user that we're looking at corresponds to the row ID of the currently logged in user, okay? And that way we can make sure that only people can edit their own profile. And then when you click on the pencil button, you'll have all the edit items. We can change the title of the screen to edit profile. And right now, I usually like to start from scratch, but we just would enter a few text entry fields, and we can make sure that some of them are required or not. I don't know if we have a bio or not. It would make sense to have a biography somewhere under users. We don't have it, so we can create just a new text column called bio. Okay, and that way we can duplicate that and select it and make sure that we are writing the data to the bio column. And we can also enter a maximum length for the bio, let's say 2,000 characters, and for the name we can set I don't know, 150 characters. We make sure that is required. What else do we need? We have to make sure people enter their city and their age, because those are required for filtering results. So that is another text entry, and that's going to be for, I'm gonna select it, and that's going to be for the city, okay? And then one for the age. So the age is going to be a number type of entry. And we're gonna, they also have to select the gender. Okay, so but let me just do the age real quickly. And then we're going to do a choice component for the gender. And remember that we created a choices table just for people to be able to grab the gender values from there. And we're going to move that to under the name. And it's going to be a choice component, of the type segmented, where we're going to grab the choices from the choices table. The values are the numeric values from the choice ID. We're going to display it as the choices are going to be under the gender profile column. It's going to be required. Okay. And there we go. In this case, she's a female. Oh, sorry. We're writing this to the gender column. Perfect. Is it required? The bio says it's required. We could say it's not required. And then right now we have basically all the data. Oh, we probably need a way for them to update their profile picture. So we need to add an image picker. And we can put that at the very top if we want to. And that's the photo. And we should make it required because everybody should have a picture. Now, if they don't have a picture, because when they create the account for the first time, they don't have a picture, we could say, do we allow people to start looking for people when they haven't completed their profile? So another thing that we can do is making sure that when people create their account for the first time, they have to complete their entire profile in order for them to be able to start swiping and finding potential matches, right? This is a way to enforce that everybody has completed profiles. And we can do that next. We finally have a fully working Tinder clone. Now, the part that is missing is optional, but if you want to force new users to create a profile when they create their account for the first time, then you have to verify whether they filled all the information that you wanted. And if they didn't, then they shouldn't be able to start swiping left and right. It's only fair that every user has enough information so they can be put into the database and people can look for them and figure out who they are, what they're looking for, maybe have a couple of pictures or a bio or something, right? So like I said, this is optional, but a simple way to do this is by checking on the user profile table whether the information you're looking for is filled in or not, and use conditional columns to assign a 1 or a 0, 1 if the value is filled in and 0 if it's not filled in, and then adding or multiplying all the values. And if you get a 0, that means that the profile is not completed. All right, so just to show you how this works, let's create a few conditional columns. Let's say is name, and we're gonna check whether the name, so if the name is not empty. If it's not empty, we assign a 1, if not, a 0. So in this case, everybody has a name entered, so it's all a 1. Now we're gonna do that for the other stuff, right? So is email. I mean, to create an account, you need to have an email for sure, but just in case, we're gonna say, well, is email not empty, done. The same thing. Where else? Duplicate. We're gonna check for is city. They have to enter their city, so we can do geolocation and figure out the distance between profiles. So is city, where is the city? Is city is not empty, and we're gonna do that same for age. Duplicate is age, and we have to do that for gender too, obviously. Is age, boom, the same thing, not empty. And duplicate, where are we looking for now? Is target gender, so they've entered their target gender. Target gender is not empty. Now I'm making sure that I'm actually, yeah, that's all good. It's age. This case, we were looking for age. So the actual age is entered. So again, we're just looking to make sure that these values are filled in. And we can do that for the rest of the values. What other value do we have here? Duplicate and photo. We should make sure that there's a photo, so it's not empty. Okay. Let me just change the title. Is photo, and we're gonna duplicate it again. What else? How many things do we want to be filled in? Target, minimum age and maximum age. All right. So minimum age is not empty. Is mean age, not empty, and then the same thing for is max age is not empty, and here we're going to look at max age. We can just look for when you have many fields, just search for them. Okay. And I think that is pretty much it. So distance. Oh, the distance. So again, we have a default for the distance, so it's not 100% needed. So we could leave that empty for now. And we always can change this, obviously, in the future, right? So now we're going to find out if the profile is fully completed, because what we're going to add is multiply all of these. Multiply all these columns, and the moment that we find a 0, that means it's incomplete. All right, and then we're going to show a warning saying, well, basically, we're not going to let them start swiping until all of these fields are completed. Okay, so we're going to make all these fields required when they create their account. And now we have to verify whether they're completed or not. So we're going to multiply them. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're going to create a math column, which is going to basically profile. I'm going to call it profile math. And it's going to be a math column. And I'm going to do A plus A times B. So there has to be 8, right? So C, D, E, F, G, H. Now we have 8, and we're going to go to all of the validation columns. Here is name, is email, is city, is age, is target gender, is photo, is minimal age, and is maximum age selected. Okay, precision 1, and basically only one user right now, Katie, meets all the criteria. So for everybody else, we show them a warning saying that they have to complete the profile. Not only that, we're going to use this to set the tab visibility. Okay, so if the profile math is 0, then they won't be able to see matches or Tinder, or sorry, the main swiping screen. Okay, by the way, we could change also the icons of the tabs because they don't look really good. I think fire will be good there. There you go. Matches, we could have some hearts there. Heart. There you go. Something like that. And profile, that looks good. Okay. So, and we also fix the design of the actual cards. We don't need the search bar, so we can turn that off right now. But in this case, the visibility of the tab is only going to be true when the currently user profile math value for all the conditions for all the fields that need to be filled in is equal 1. So we go to the tab, we go to options, and we're going to go to visibility, and we're going to go to math, and we're looking at the profile math, the user profile math equals 1, right? And it's not true for the currently logged in user. Now, if we go to Katie, it should be 1, right? And then she can see that tab. And we're going to do the same thing for matches. We're going to say that the user profile math is equals 1. And then she can see her results, her matches. And the profile, you should always be able to see it. All right. So the thing is that if I'm logged in as, let's say, Grumo, me, I only can see the profile page, right? The other two ones, it says this screen visibility's condition is false, so I cannot see it, which is forcing me, the moment I create the account, to fill in all the data. And I could have here a little warning. To create warning messages, you can use the hint component. And then we can show the component when the math of the profile, only when the math of the profile, so profile math equals 0 or is not 1. I mean, either or. You could say doesn't equal 1, for example. Either. And then we're going to say profile incomplete and have a little warning sign there. Warning sign. Center this. We can change the color to warning and say, please complete your to be able to start swiping profiles. Thanks. And then we can have a button that basically takes them to directly to the profile edit page. So they can either click here or just click on the button that we're going to create right now. And we're going to just make it easy for people to find where they have to click. Okay. And so we could also say don't show any of this unless the profile is completed, right? But before that, we're just going to add the button that says complete profile and add it just under the hint message, the warning message, and it's going to say complete profile or click here to complete profile or just click to complete profile. Okay, and that's going to take us to the edit, show the edit screen for this item, and we're going to call that edit profile. And when we click on it, it takes us to the edit profile. And here we just want to make sure that the values that need to be completed are actually completed. Otherwise, we won't get rid of the hint message. So we got the name, the age, the gender, the city. What else did we need? Now we need the actual, our criteria as well. Which criteria we want to use for searching. And we actually can copy all of this and then so check this out. I can copy all the components here. No, all of them. Copy all of the components. And when I go to the edit screen, I can paste them. So that would be the paste button. So Control C or Command C. All right, I'm gonna paste them. And now I just can get rid of what I don't need. So all of that, the button, and then here, actually can make these two required, okay? So we have everything. This has to be completed in order for us to be able to see the done button. And if we did this right, when we enter the minimum age, let's say 25, by the way, here we should also set that the minimum age should be 18. You cannot look for anybody under 18. And then let's just say 20, 45. Now we can click done and let's see if the warning has disappeared. And it has disappeared. So we could, now you can see the other two tabs, the Tinder tab and the Matches tab. Now that it's completed, we don't need these complete buttons. So we're just going to set the visibility. So when the profile math, not meth, meth, what am I thinking about? Profile math is only showing when it equals 0, right? And now it's okay. So let's pretend that we're logged in as somebody else, because now Miguel has completed the entire profile, but let's say that we log in as somebody that hasn't completed their profile. So let's say John, and it says now we get the warning and we will have to complete the profile in order to get rid of the error message or the warning message and to be able to start Tindering. Now, another thing we can do is when somebody completes the profile, if we go to the edit screen, we have the option to enter an unsubmit action. So since they've completed their profile, the only way they can basically complete this form is by completing all the required fields. Then we know that once they complete it, they have a completed profile. Now we can take them directly to the swiping tab. So we could just say go to tab right? And in this case, called the Tinder tab. Or maybe also give them a combined action, which is going to be, so in this case, we're going to say profile completed action. And we're going to take them to the Tinder tab, okay? And we're going to also give them a notification saying like, start swiping or something like that. Swiping, okay? Save. And now when anybody completes their profile, so the bio was not required, but I mean, we could make them required if we wanted as well. So in this case, she's going to be looking for 25 to 45 to, and we can click done. When we click done, she will be taken directly to the swiping tab. So she can start looking for potential partners. There you go, start swiping, and now she can start swiping. Boom, 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 boom. So that's been a quick way of implementing or enforcing users to complete their profile. Now we're going to allow users to add multiple photos, because when you're Tindering or swiping left and right, you want to make sure that there is not just one image. So for that, we're going to have to create a new table, and we're going to call it, let's say, photos. And we're going to have, well, I always say just make sure that your tables have a row ID, because you may need it in the future, and that allows you to create unique identifiers for each row. And then you could have here, edit this and make sure that is an image type of column. Boom. And of course, we're going to rename it to photo. And then we need a user ID column to identify who's the owner of the photo. So for that, we could change this to user ID. And maybe we can leave the date just as a timestamp, and maybe a caption if you want to change that to caption, if users want to explain what the picture was about, and we can change that to text, right? So now people can start uploading pictures. And so for that, we need to create the form to upload pictures, which is pretty simple. We could simply go to the user profile, and under user profile, we could have a button that allows people to upload pictures. So we could just add a new component, button. We can put it maybe under there, and I'll say upload photos, and change this to like a plus symbol or a photo symbol. I don't know if you can, there's photo symbols somewhere, photography. Yeah, why not? Something like that, upload photos. And then the action is going to be form, show form screen. And we're gonna call that upload photo. So when people click on it, we're taking to a form, but it should be connected to the photos table. And then we're going to have two fields. One is an image picker, which is already connected to the correct column, and a caption one, and we can restrict the maximum length to, let's say, 300 characters or something like that. And the default value, no default value, and it's not required, that's optional, but the photo, it is required. You, if you're uploading a photo, that should be required. And people kind of start uploading photos. Now, the only problem is that now we're not assigning the photo to anybody, so we have to create another component that is going to grab the row ID of, well, in this case, the currently logged in user. So we can grab that one, and it's going to be associated with the user ID column. All right, so that's good. And then the date for the timestamp, which I think we can just type date here, and special values, and that's already been assigned to the date column under the photos table. So now when we upload a new picture, it will be added to that specific user. Okay? So let's pretend I'm logged in as myself. So I'm just gonna change that and go to Grumo. And I can upload photos now, and I'm gonna upload 3 photos. You could set that there is a minimum of photos that you have to upload, but let's just say that. We're gonna keep it simple, and I'm gonna upload 3 photos, submit, and another photo. This photo, for example, basically is the same image with different backgrounds. And a third photo, boom, with a black background. Perfect. So we uploaded 3 photos. The problem is that they're not displaying anywhere. So we need a way to display the photos. So one way we can do that is by going to the users table and creating a relation column that connects the user profile with the pictures that that user has uploaded. So the way to do that is we create a photos relation column, and we have to match it with the values under photos where it says user ID. And now we got the connection, which means now we can display the photos. Where we could display them as an inline list under or over the button of upload pictures. So inline list, and we can put that over the button here, and we can display them as styles and just get rid of the metadata, right? We don't need that. We do need the picture. We're gonna have 3 images per row, and they're gonna be square, right? And when people click, and we can get rid of the title too. We don't need the photos, well. Okay, that could be one way. And then we can just click on the photo and that takes us to the actual detail, but that doesn't look right. So Glide attempts to create screens automatically based on your columns, but most of the time it doesn't do a great job. So we have to do that now. It's just add an image. And because the images can be uploaded in different aspect ratios, let's say portrait versus horizontal, if you want to make sure that you always show the entire picture, you should click the original 1:1 ratio. Okay, so now that's in landscape, and you can select edge to edge or inset with content. I like this way. Now under actions, I like to have the action which is enlarge image, which means when you click on it, you can zoom in on it, and on the actual mobile device, you'll be able to pinch and zoom in or zoom out. So it allows you to see more detail on the actual picture. And now what we could do, since we've uploaded the pictures, is to show the pictures under the user profile. So because I'm the only user with images, I have to log out and log in as a female that hasn't liked me yet, and I should appear. Okay, sorry, Katie's looking for females. Now she's gonna look for males, and I should appear here somewhere. Perfect. So I know I have 3 pictures. So one thing I can do is just get rid of the email, because we're not gonna be disclosing this to everybody. And we can add an inline list with the actual pictures, the photo gallery under it, inline list. So we're gonna add an inline list. We're gonna put it underneath here, and we have the photos, and again we have to do the same thing. We're gonna get rid of that, and we're gonna get rid of all the metadata because we don't need it. Let me just select this. Oh, okay, so we're gonna show this as tiles, and we don't need the caption. We do need the image. We are going to show 3 images per row. They're going to be a square. Okay, and then we can decide how do we display them, maybe like that. That could be more interesting in that case. Now when you click on it, we could do the same thing. When people click on them, we can show them the actual image, right? And right now, perfect. It's showing us the 1:1 ratio image, and that's all good. Perfect. So we created the ability for users to upload pictures and display them under their user profile, both under their personal user profile and then when they're searching for potential dates. Now we're going to beautify the app. I recommend that first you focus on the logic and make sure that the app functionality is there, and then you focus on how things look. And in Glide, it's very easy. You don't have a lot of control about the actual design elements, but you have overall settings that already look good by default, so you save a lot of time. So if I want to change the color right now, I can go to settings and appearance, and I can make this, well, let's say pinkish, and I can change the app info, and I can look for hearts here, and make it more like a kind of like dating app type of look. And I can change the title and call this swiping dating app or something like that, whatever you want. And you can control all the other settings as you require. I'm gonna make this a public app and allow people to sign with their Google account. But in terms of look, those are the main settings. Also, the sign-in screen you can change. You can change the greeting here and the description. And for further customization, you can get a pro account. But that's a quick way of changing the color scheme. But then in terms of the actual screens, we could have some defaults to make sure that it always looks good, whether people have information or not. So let's say that you haven't uploaded any pictures, but we want to have an area for pictures, right? So we could go to our choices here and add another column called maybe default photos and create a column of the type image. And then we can upload, default avatar picture, and we're gonna do that 3 times, right? And again, and again. All right. And we can always display images, those 3 images, if the person hasn't uploaded any images. So we will duplicate the inline list for the photos, and we will grab the photos from, instead of the user table, but from the choices. And we're going to grab, it already found them already. That's fantastic. But we only want to show a maximum of 3 results. So there should be only 3 results there. And we can filter to make sure that we don't see the see all button. We can filter it and basically say that we are only going to show photos where the default photos is not empty. Perfect. And now we're only going to show the default photos when no photos have been uploaded. So then we have to count the number of photos each user has uploaded. And for that, we can go to the users table and create a roll-up column to summarize. So photos count to summarize, so roll-up column, summarize the number of photos, so row ID, and count, summarize the number of photos. And then we can go to back to the screen here, and we can say only show this visibility when the photo count is equals 0, right? Equals 0 or is empty. Now, for the photos, we only show them if they are really already been uploaded, but that already happens by default. If there are no photos uploaded, they won't show, because if we go to a different profile, you can see how now we're showing the default photos, but there is that inline list component with the photos is not showing. We could set a visibility condition if we wanted by saying, if under photos count is greater than 1 or is not 0, doesn't equal 0 to show it, right? But it's gonna have the same result, so we can actually delete that condition. The next thing we may want to show is under the user's name is their age and the distance between our city where we are right now. And for that, we can use a template column where we put both the age and the distance. So we're going to create a template column called profile details or something like that, txt, and then template, and we're going to grab the age, and then within parentheses we're going to have the distance. So A is going to be replaced with the age, right? And B is going to be replaced with the distance. The distance. Let me find this again. Distance to target. Okay, perfect. Do we need to have that level of precision? Maybe not, so we can always go to distance, and where we have the computed column, we can edit it and just remove that and make it just a round number. And now under the tile component, we can grab that template, and we can see now that we can see the distance, the age, and the distance. And wow, I'm 25 years old. That's pretty amazing. Cool. And what else could we have? Like a little bio under the profile of each person. So we could add a text component here. Text, maybe there, and grab the actual bio. Okay. And we could truncate text lines if we don't want to have more than, let's say, 4 lines. And what else could we have? We could have an indicator of what happens when you swipe left or right. And we can use a simple button bar for that. And we can put the button bar right, let me see, just under the name. And we can change what happens, right? So we can say, if you swipe left to dismiss, okay, something like that. Maybe put a failure sign there, and on the right action we could say swipe right to like. Okay, these are just indicators. We could use like something else, right? And then maybe like a little indicator here, like a, instead of, well, we could have, what kind of button we could have? We could have this type of button, and as a symbol we could have a, like an X. Let me just grab an X, and for the right button it would be a check. Okay, all right, perfect. So left you don't like, right you like, fantastic. Okay, we can test this with a different user, let's say Joanne, and this person, those people don't have bios, but anyways, it's working. And under the profile, we could add maybe a little table with some information about that user. So maybe right under here, and we could have a table that contains the age of that user, another row for the gender. Okay. Oh, we're not grabbing, that's the thing, we haven't, that's the gender value. We need the gender text. So the gender text is that one. Because remember, we are using a relation column to grab the gender text values from the choices table. And we can have another row for the city. This is just so people know what they entered. And if they don't like it, they can always change it. And then later on, we can add stats. I mean, I know Tinder doesn't show you your stats, which would be very useful to know what percentage of people like your profile and whether that is below or above average. But I really, I don't think most people want to know, because if you realize that you're way below average, that may not be very motivating. Of course, if you are super hot, and that could feed your ego, which a lot of people use these apps just to feed their ego and not really dating, just to feel good about themselves. But anyways, we already have a app that looks good. I mean, this could be maybe make a little bit more pretty, but it's fully working. Matches are working. We have this, We also have the when you create a new account, if it's not completed, it will force you to complete the account. So again, we signed in as somebody that didn't complete the account, so they're gonna get that message, and they have to complete the profile. I don't like when two buttons look exactly the same, so I'm going to change that button to that. And then you got that message. And the next thing we're going to do is, again, optional, but I think very useful, create an admin dashboard where we can change some default global values and also see some overall stats of our app. We're going to create an admin dashboard to track really cool stats. And this is something that you can use from all the apps that you create. It's really interesting to see how your app is performing, and how many users do you have and what are these users are doing, and that way you can improve your app based on this data. So for that, we're going to have a new tab here under the top left menu, and for the administrator, they'll be able to see an admin tab that says admin. So we're going to create a new table, and we're going to create it, well, admin. Of course, of course. Okay, so we call it admin. We add a new row, and we're gonna call this admin. It's gonna be the screen ID. And the reason why I gave it an ID is because sometimes you want to have multiple screens, and you can always use this table. I mean, this table could be actually called screens, and then you can have an admin screen and all kind of backend screens for maintenance and for data or whatever you want to. Anyway, so boom, we have that. And now we can delete these other tables. We don't need them. I'm just gonna delete them. Delete, 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 delete. Okay. And it created a row for no reason. So we're gonna delete that row. Boom. Perfect. So now we can create a new tab. Create a new tab. Boom. It's gonna be called admin. And we're gonna give it a lock symbol to show how important and unique is this tab. But this tab should be under the menu. All right. And now everybody can see it, but we only want the administrator to be able to see this. Now I'm gonna set myself as the administrator. And for that, I can create a new column under the users table called, well, admin or something like that. And say it's a text value, and then I'm gonna type the value admin, and only the people with the admin value under the admin column are administrators. In this case is me, so I'm gonna pretend to log in as myself. Okay, and then when I go to the admin tab and I go to options and visibility, I'm going to make sure that under admin the value is equal admin, which in my case is true. Therefore, I can see that tab. Now, if we log in as somebody else, Joanne, for example, she cannot see the tab because she's not an administrator. Boom. Okay. So now we click on the admin tab, and we got a bunch of stuff there. These are all the users, because the admin tab is connected to the users table and should be connected to the admin table. And in this case, we only have one screen, but we're going to filter for that specific screen. And no, we're going to filter the results here under list options. And the filter is going to be that the screen ID, it has to be equal admin. All right. And now under general, we're going to make sure we're showing details. And now we have an empty screen where we can start adding data specific for the administrators. What would we like to add here, for example? So maybe the total of users, the total of swipes, and and then the percentage that profiles are liked on the average. So some data like that. The easiest thing we can do right now is create a table and add some roll-up columns, right, to add data. But the roll-up columns have to be created first, so we can pull the data later. And we're gonna create, well, total users, and it's gonna be a roll-up column that adds all the users. Okay, count, well, unique. They're always gonna be unique because the row ID is always unique. So we have 14 users, and then we can count how many are female, male, and other. So we're going to duplicate this, and total male, let's say, and we're going to count. Oh, I see. You cannot count them because when we count them, you cannot count something using a conditional statement. For example, we only want to count those users where the value of their gender is equal 1, which would be male, or 2 female, or 3 other. Right now, it will just count all the users. So what we have to do is create a relation column that only pulls the gender that we're looking for. So what we're gonna do here is gonna just type male ID, and the male ID is 1. We know that from the choices table, right? So 1, I'm just gonna type 1 with precision 1, okay? And what I'm trying to do again is, I know that people have selected 1 as their gender are males. So what I'm going to look for is for that value under the users table, right? So here, gender, everybody that is 1 is a male, 2, female, 3, other. And by creating a relation column, I can count those user profiles that match the specific gender that I'm looking for, okay? So I'm gonna do the same thing here for female. Female ID, I know is 2, right? And other, duplicate. Other ID is 3. Okay, and I can create 3 relation columns, right? So male, rel, relation, where I'm gonna grab the male ID and find it inside the users table under gender, match multiple. There you go. And I already found all the males, which are 7 in this case. Duplicate, the same for females. And I'm going to match the female ID, and then for other, duplicate other ID and grab the other ID, and match it perfect, yeah, with the user gender. That was correct. There's no matches because nobody's other right now. And now we can use a roll-up column to count how many males, females, and others. So we can duplicate the roll-up column that counts all the users and go total male. And right now we are counting all the males under the relation. Okay, we got 7 as we expected. And we do the same for the females. So the females and female rel, row ID, there should be 7. That's correct. And we're going to duplicate that with total other. And that's going to find all the others. And there you go. We got 0 for that. Perfect. So we got some stats already we can pull in into our admin dashboard. And let's just put them under this table. So total users, add another row, total male, total females, total other, and maybe want to, so total other, make this singular, right? Boom, so we got some interesting data now. The next thing we can do is to calculate the percentage of each gender based on the total users. And for that, we would create a math column for each of the potential genders. So we're going to create a male pair, which is going to be a math column. And we're going to do male times 100 divided by total users, right? So total male divided times 100 divided by the total users, and precision 1, and we're going to add units as percentage. All right, so we can see there's 50% male, and we're going to do the same thing, duplicate that for female, male pair, and I mean we could put that in there, and it's going to be the female, total females, and divided by the total users, and we got 50% too, and duplicate the same thing for other percentage, and I mean we could leave the same, but just to make it easier, we're gonna do the total other, and we got that. Now, so if we change, let's say we convert somebody to other, and other is 3, right? So let's say that Katie now sees other. So when we go back to our admin, we'll see how the percentages have changed, right? So we got 50% male, 43% female, and other 7%, which is 1 out of 14 users. Now we can add that data to the existing table and say, percentage of male and female and all of that. But if we want to create a chart, it's not going to work because the charts need the data in a series of rows. And right now we have all the data in a linear row. So one trick we can use is go to our, let me undo this, is go to our choices table, and then since we already have here listed the different genders, is to attach the value of that gender to another column, the percentage of the gender to another column, and then create a chart based on that column with all the values for the genders. So the first thing is we need to again grab the total of users. So we're going to do a total users column, and we're going to do our roll-up that basically just counts the users on the user table, count unique, and we get 14. Now we're going to use the values of the potential gender profiles, in this case 3, to create a relation column that finds those values that match inside the users table. So okay, we're going to do that for the, basically we're going to call that gender or count, and it's going to be a relation column that finds the choice ID, which is going to be the value of the gender of each user, and the gender column, okay, match multiple, and now we can count each gender, right? So it's just a matter of doing another roll-up column, right? Just click plus. We just have to make a copy of this roll-up column. So duplicate, and that's going to be called the gender count, and we're just going to count the genders. There you go. How many of each, and as we knew, it was 7, 6, and 1. And then we can do again the percentage, and that's going to be a math column, which we're going to call gender percentage math column, and basically it's going to be the gender count divided by the total of users, precision 1, units, percentage, and that's exactly what we were looking for. And now that we have this, we can pull this into our admin dashboard. So we go to our admin dashboard here. I'm logged in as the administrator, go to admin, and I can add a chart. Okay, and it's going to be, the values are going to grab them from choices, and we're looking at the gender profile text, and we're going to look at we're going to do a pie chart, and the values are the gender percentages, and we can maybe show a different type of color like that, and we can put that on top. Yep. And there you go. Now we have a beautiful chart showing the ratio of different genders. We're already using the percentage of genders. We don't have to really show them here, so we could maybe just get rid of that, unless we wanted to see specific counts, right? So what we have right now is the total users and then the ratio of different genders. And the next thing we're going to do is pull some stats as to how liked our profiles. This is completely optional, but it's going to teach us how to grab more statistical data into an admin dashboard. We're going to add a little bit of more statistical data into our admin dashboard. In this case, we want to see what are the total swipes across the entire app and the total matches that have existed, and then the average like percentage of each profile. Again, completely optional, but interesting to go through this process to understand how to grab statistical data from our database. And to do that, we're going to store under the users table 2 pieces of data that are quite useful. One is how many swipes each user has done. So swipes, total swipes, whether they're left or right. And then we're going to store that into a number column with precision 1. And then we're going to add another column, duplicate the swipes column, for likes received. Okay? And we're going to store those 2 pieces of data in these columns, and then we could aggregate this data to find out, how much each profile is liked individually and as a whole, the average liked percentage for all the profiles as a whole. But that means now every time somebody swipes, we need to store this. And the way we're going to do that is when we go to the main swiping screen and click on the swipe component, remember that we had 2 actions. So right on the swipe right action, what we need to do now is track every time a profile gets liked. So to do that, we can create another action, and it's going to be an increment action. Okay, and what we're going to do is to this item, which is the profile that we're looking at, because we swiped right. Remember, this is the swipe right action, which means we liked this item, which in this case is the profile we're looking at. We're going to add to the likes received, incremented by 1. So every time we like it, we're going to increment it by 1. We also have to add this increment to when a match happens, which is the other conditional. And we can do that anywhere here, but let's just do it here, let's say. And we're going to increment this item, and it's going to be the number of likes received by 1. Now we also want to increment of total swipes of the currently logged in user. So if we were to do another increment action, we will have to add this increment to the currently logged in user. But as you can see, we cannot see that right now. We can see a bunch of relation columns, but none to the actual currently logged in user. So for that, we need to do a trick. Let me just delete this for now. Okay. And we have to pull the currently logged in user inside the users table. Okay, so bear with me. The way we're going to do that is we're going to create another column with the currently logged in user ID. So current user ID, and it's going to be a template column, and it's going to pull the currently logged in user ID. Okay. And we're going to match this to the table. It's going to be like a self-referencing relation. So current user rel and relation, we're going to pull the currently logged in user ID, match it with the user's row ID, and we always should get just one result. But when we do that, now we can write to that specific user row, and we want to write into this column, the swipes, the total swipes column, right? So now we can go back to actions, and when we go to swipe right, we can add an increment that adds 2. Now you can see we have the currently user rel, and we're going to add to the total swipes 1, and we're going to do the same thing, all right, to the other condition when there is a match. So it's going to be an increment of 1 to the currently logged in user row, total swipes, and now we are storing both. We're storing the likes into the user profile that has been liked and the total swipes that the currently logged in user is giving. Okay? So if I'm logged in as Grumo and I like Mary, let's look what's going to happen. Boom. Okay, so I should have the value of 1 under my swipe total. All right, which is correct. And Mary received 1 like. And if I do a bunch of swipes, actually no, it should work for left and right, correct? So right now I'm adding 1 swipe to only the right, but total swipes count whether I like or dislike a profile. So if I go again to the swipe list, I should add a left swipe action, and I'm gonna call that left swipe, and I'm gonna add also an increment to the currently logged in user swipes, okay, by 1. Okay, boom. So now every time I swipe either left or right, so I'm gonna swipe a bunch of times left, boom, 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 boom. We go to the users table, and when we go to the swipes, I got 8 swipes. Okay, there you go, and 1 like only. I should also store the dislike so I can find the like to dislike ratio. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to go to users and create another column, and I'm going to say call it dislikes sift, and that also going to have a numeric value of precision 1. And what I have to do under the swipe left action is to add, so increment for this item. I'm just going to type dislikes received at 1. Okay, so now with that data, I can figure out the like to dislike ratio. And something we can do here is quickly populate some of these numbers, right, to basically calculate. These are just proxy numbers. Because these are the swipes given and these are the swipes received. So the total swipes somebody receives is the combination of both likes and dislikes, but these are the total swipes they've given to other profiles. Okay, so now with these 3 columns, we can get all the stats that we need in order to figure out how liked is a specific profile. Now I can calculate the total swipes received, which is the likes plus the dislikes with a math column. So total swipe received, and that is a math column that is going to add A plus B, where A is likes received and B is dislikes received, precision 1. And with that, we can find out the percentage of people that like that profile. Okay, so that would be another math column that is going to be like percentage math column, and here we're going to say that A is the total likes and B is the total swipes received, and we turn this to a percentage. Okay, now because there's no dislikes, everybody's getting 100%, but if I have like somebody like 2 likes and 1 dislike, those are more realistic numbers, right? And you start getting the actual liked ratio for all the profiles here. And now we have enough data to display this to the actual user for their personal information with a template column, just saying liked per txt, and we're going to use a template column that is going to show us where A is the like percentage, B is the total likes received, right? And C is the total swipes received. Okay, and now we have a nice little piece of data. But you can see if they haven't received any likes or swipes, then the data that we get is not very pretty. So we have to now use a conditional column to make sure we only display the like percentage when there's actually some data to show, some pretty data. So we're going to create a conditional column, and it's going to be in if and then column. We're only going to show that value, the like percentage text value, when the total swipes received is greater than 0. In that case, we will show the percentage, and if not, we won't show anything, or we can show something like not enough data. Okay, now we can go to the user profile, and we can add another row to this column where it's basically we're gonna display their like percentage, right? And we can clean that, like percentage or something like that. There you go. And because now we're collecting that data, we can bring it into our admin dashboard, and we can show the total swipes. So for that, we go to our admin table, and we're going to do another roll-up column. So duplicate that, and it's going to be the total swipes. And we're going to aggregate all the swipes across all the users. So users, and then we have total swipes, so the swipes, and we're going to sum it. All right, so there's 143 total swipes, and the average liked is going to be another roll-up column, and it's going to be the average liked percentage. And in this case, we're just going to grab from the users, the like percentage, and it's going to be the average. So we can see that now the average like for the profiles so far is 37%, And of course, now we have that data. We can add it here, another row, and we can find the total swipes, 143, and the same thing for the average like percentage, 37%. Great. The final thing we can count is the total matches. Now, the matches are here under the matches table. The problem is that we add a new row every time somebody likes somebody, but the match only happens is when both people like each other. So if we were to count all these rows, we would get way more matches than we actually have. So the trick here is that we could use the chat ID to count how many times every specific chat ID shows up. So let me show you this, how it would work. We will say chat rel, and we're going to create a relation column that is counting how many times each chat ID shows up. So we're going to match the chat ID to the matches chat ID and match multiple. Then what we can do is count chat count, and we're going to use a roll-up column where we're going to count basically how many times that shows up. Okay, so the count is 2. That means that counts as a match, and when it's 1 is no match. So to count the number of matches, we're going to use this is tricky. We're going to use a math column. No, we're going to use a conditional column that is going to look at whether it's a 2 or not for the chat count. So is match, okay, and if then and else, so conditional column. So when the chat count is equals 2, then let's say the value is 1, otherwise is 0. Okay, so now every time there is a match, there is going to be a value 1. Then what we can do is sum all the values once and divide it by 2, and that's the number of matches, right? Let me just like a bunch of people here. If we go to the matches, we can see we added a bunch of new rows. Of course, those girls have not liked me back, so there is no match there. Okay, unless I go, let's say, to Eva, and then I'm gonna pretend to be Eva or Eva, and she's gonna like me. First, she has to finish her profile, of course. You see, now everything is working. So complete profile. Eva, please, complete your profile. And then she's going to look from 25 to 45, range 80 kilometers. And now she's going to start swiping. And then when she finds me, oh, shit, I skipped myself, right? There is a match. So when we go to matches, now there should be 2 matches. So the sum of the matches column, each match column is going to be 4. And when I divide it by 2, that's the number of matches. So I can go back to my admin dashboard here and do another roll-up column. So duplicate that one. And I'm going to say total matches times 2, for example, because we know we have to divide it by 2 in order to get to the total of matches. So we're going to go to matches, and then each match we're going to sum it, so it's 4, okay, and then we're going to use a math column called total matches, and in the math column all we're going to do is divide the total matches times 2 by 2, and now we have the total of matches, which we know is exactly 2. Correctus mondus, correctus mondus. And we can add this to our, let's log in as the administrator. The administrator can see the admin panel, and we can add this to our table as the total matches in the entire system. And we created a fully featured, fantastic, bombastic administrator dashboard. Cheers. The final step is to publish our app and distribute it. To do that, all we have to do is click the publish button, then publish app, and then immediately becomes available to the whole world via this URL, which we can customize if it's available. So my Tinder app, that's taken. So my Tinder, so we can say something else, Tinder project, and that's available. We can copy that. We can use this QR code to share the app. Now we can click on the share button, and this will open the app on our browser, and then we can use that same link to open the app on our device and install it. And here we can log in. I'm going to log in as the administrator, and then I should be able to start using the app. Okay, perfect. And I can start swiping and liking people and seeing if I get any matches. And if I have any matches, will appear here. And then I can start chatting. Hola, Eva, let's meet. Yes. And she can like me back or chat. And then she can chat back to me. And then I can check my profile and I can see the percentage of people that like my profile and change my preferences to look for different people, right? And that's it. You just created a fully working Tinder clone. Congratulate yourself because you've learned a lot in this project. We covered so much ground, but I'm sure you still have many questions. So if you want to learn more, check out my new course at grumo.com/Go Glide. You will go from 0 to Glide Master in just 8 hours. Use the coupon YouTubeLove for a 50% discount. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Ring.